Hey guys, Josh Carter here with One Objective Outdoors. Today we're going to be talking about Alabama rigging. The last couple videos I've done, that's basically what all my fish came off of. So we've had some questions about my Alabama rig setup and what baits I use and all that. So I want to go ahead and cover all that in this video, so stay tuned. Alright guys, like I said at the beginning of this video, we're going to be going over my Alabama rig setup. And if you don't know what the Alabama rig is, it's basically a technique that you can throw 5 baits at a time, you can throw 3 baits at a time, you can throw 2 baits at a time. It just depends on your state laws. So before you even think about throwing this bait, definitely check your state laws, because it's where I'm at in Virginia, I can throw 5, but Tennessee you can only throw 3 baits that have hooks on them, and you can use the other 2 as trailers. So I just, like I say, I stress, make sure you check your state laws before you go out there and start throwing Alabama rig. Now this is basically what it is right here. It's you know, I got 5 hooks on this one. This is the Yum Flash Mob Junior, so it's got the blades on there, and I feel like for me, I've thrown Alabama rigs for a couple years now, and I haven't had a lot of success with them until here recently. And I don't know if it's just figuring out my electronics a little bit more, finding out where those fish are at, but also changing up how I do things. I was throwing generic, like some ones I had made up, just some cheap A rigs. I didn't have spinner blades on them. I didn't have a lot of action on it. And I ain't saying that every time you need to throw one with some blades on it, because it just depends on the fish that day. They might not want all that flash and flare. So, but like I say, this is the Flash Mob Junior from Yum. So far it's been good. I mean, the thing about Alabama rig, and like I said, I haven't thrown a lot of big brands. I haven't tried a lot of different brands. I just kind of go with basically what I find cheaper. I am a tightwad when it comes to A-rigs. And the reason why is because when you throw these things out there, hanging them up in trees and stuff like that, it's hard to get some of them back depending on your setup. So I'll show you a little bit, like say, get more into this, and I'll show you why I do what I do with this setup. But like I say, and a lot of times what I do with this, let me take it off of here, is I always have like 4 of mine. If I'm throwing a 5 hook or something like that, I always have 4 of mine the same style shad looking bait. And these are all the Missile Shockwaves. These are the 4.5 or 4.25, whatever you call these right here. Yeah, it's 4.25. Missile Bait Shockwave, and they're a great bait. They got a lot of great action, but I always, on that middle one, I'll throw one a little bit different color. This one is Bombshell. Yeah, Bombshell. So it's just got a little more chartreuse in it. It's got a little bit of pearl on the top, like a bluish pearl on the top. It stands out different. It's different than these baits. It's the one that's further back. So it gives that bass something to hone in on. I mean, they can come up and bust through this, and you'd be surprised at how many fish will come up and bust through this thing and never get one hook in them. It's pretty crazy. So, but like I said, I always try to have one they can hone in on. And sometimes I'll just take a white one. If all these are white, I'll take the other one in the back. It might be white, and I might put like a color the belly red, or put like a red around the gill plates, or something for them to zero in on and target. A lot of what else I do with these to help them run straight, so it ain't turning and this and that. And a lot of it really don't matter, because these are on swivel, so they're going to try to run. They're going to pretty much run true as they can. But I just don't like it twisting underwater or doing all this craziness. So I'll run 1/4 ounce heads on the bottom. These two right here, and on the top, if I can run hooks, I run 1/8 ounce jig heads on the top. And like I say, it just keeps everything running true, running straight. And then my back one a lot of times is an 1/8 ounce, but I always just run my 2 bottom ones as a heavier jig. Now these jig heads, I pour these myself. If I'm out of town or run out, I'll buy some somewhere, but most of the time I pour these myself, and we use a thinner wire hook. Now you got to be careful, because sometimes you'll get 2 fish at a time on these. If y'all seen in some of my other videos, I think it's happened to me twice this year, 3 times this year. You got to be careful. I like pouring them because I can keep a lot in my boat, because these things will get bent. But the reason why I go with a thin wire is if I'm throwing out there and I'm working in like a 15 to 20 foot brush pile, if it hangs up, I can go over it, and especially using braid, I can pull it up and it'll straighten them hooks out. Now, when you're fighting a big fish like stripers and all that stuff, you do got to be careful, okay? Because like I say, they can bend these hooks out. So setting your drag right, the right action rod, all of that is going to be key in getting the fish into the boat. Now, I haven't I have lost a couple fish on it, but I think a lot of times is what they do is they come up and they just smash through it and they get one in their side and they come off. But a lot of the ones that they're choking this back bait or choking one of these bottom baits, they got it in their mouth pretty good. So, but like I say, just the right rod and the right line setup is key to this, because for one, it helps you from losing so many of them. But two, also how your baits will run and the depths they run and staying deeper and all that stuff, and your retrieve speed. So, but right now I'm just running Sunline braid on here. I'm more than likely, since it's getting cold, the water's clear here on Smith Mountain Lake, I'm going to switch over to about a 20-25 pound fluorocarbon. And I like to have a little bit heavier line, but the reason why I'm switching on fluorocarbon is it's clear. I don't know if it makes a big difference. I've just noticed that I've had some fish turn away from it. I've had some fish that really didn't show much interest in it. So I don't know if line is going to be a big deal. I know some people are, you know, that's, you gotta have clear line, you gotta have fluorocarbon, you gotta have mono, whatever. I've caught a lot of fish on braid, but like say, I haven't started having success with this thing except for like here recently. You know, like I've started figuring things out, starting to get a better combination. But I think I'm gonna go over and go back to fluorocarbon on this clearer water right now, and just see if that helps out much. You know, who knows? I might end up losing more of these, because if I get hung up in a tree, I might end up breaking the line. But you know, that's the thing about these. You know, I mean, you cast it out there, you got basically almost a whole pack of you know, swim baits on here. The jig heads, like say if you pour them yourself or if you buy them off a buddy or whatever, you don't need high dollar jig heads for this. Some people like throwing, you know, nicer stuff and all that. But like I say, I throw thin wire hooks. I just baby the fish in. I don't horse them. And then sometimes I have to replace them. I'll take it off and replace it. I don't like bending hooks back too many times, because you're making the hook weak. So maybe once, twice, and then after that I'm replacing it. And then something else I like to do too, so you're not getting frustrated through the day, or you make that good cast and you get it in and your bait's hanging off. I like to super glue all of my my soft plastics onto the jig head. It just helps a lot. And then another thing that you'll run into as well sometimes when you cast these things, they'll be all hooked on one another. If you do have that, just try to spread it out a little bit more, and that'll help. Another thing I like to do too with this is, you notice I got these here, and these are actually further back than I normally like them, but I like to push them up just a little bit more, have it right over top. It keeps it a little bit further away from the other baits. But also too, if you're like, say you're fishing Tennessee and you are using these top ones as just your trailer hooks, your like a screw lock on here or something, you can't have no hooks. It's really good to have them further up, because hopefully they'll key in onto the bottom ones, or the hook in the middle here, instead of hitting these top ones. And a lot of times, like say, when you're throwing this and you're out there throwing it on if you're watching Live Scope, or you got a regular graph and you're scanning around and you're seeing where the bait fish are at, and you're seeing bass up under them, it's trying to count it down and keeping this bait above the bass. That's the main thing. Now Pickwick, I was able to cast it out there and drag the bottom, and they were just burning it up. But 9 times out of 10, I got to keep it above their head. And you'll watch on like Live Scope, they'll come out of there like a missile and just bust right through the middle of this thing, or they'll come up and turn and then come hit it. So like I say, I like keeping these taller, and I like them to kind of come in and hit these bottom ones. But on on my rod setup, now this is actually a older setup. They really don't even make this particular rod. I think they make it in a different series now, a different name. I mean, Falcon does still have the Keros, but this is a Jason Christie frogging rod. Now, you want to know why I throw a frogging rod with it? I like this rod because it has got a lot of backbone to it, but it's got a really fast tip on it. So when I'm using braid and I'm setting the hook on it, I'm not bending these hooks out, and it just, but if I'm kind of, popping it through the water, trying to make that thing flare a little bit, if I got a super heavy action rod with this, it doesn't get as great as action with the flaring, and I'm pulling it further through the water than I really want to when I do that. So that's why I just throw this, like I say, Jason Christie frogging rod. This one is this is a 611. I normally like throwing a little bit longer rod when I'm throwing stuff out there a little bit further, but 611, I mean, you're right there at that 7-foot range. It's a great rod for this. But it's a great universal rod because this is not something I throw all year long. So when frogging season's in, I'm basically taking an A-rig off anyways. I'm not throwing it all year. And then I'm throwing a frog on and braiding, and we're hitting the pads or grass or whatever. But this one can do up to a half ounce to a half ounce to 1.5 ounce. It might be a little bit more weight for this one it needs to be, but it does really well. It slings it out there a long ways, and fighting the fish, I haven't had no issues with it. It's done good battling fish in, and like I say, not bending the hooks out. This is just the old Revo SX. A lot of times I do that because I'm throwing braid on there, and you know how sometimes your braid will spool up and pow, hit real hard and about jerk your rod out your hand. I think I just like using the older one, so I ain't tearing up a brand new reel. So, and that's basically it. I mean, like I say, I'm going to switch back over to fluorocarbon for these lakes that are a lot clearer, especially this time of the year and the winter time's hitting. But most of the time when I'm working this, I'm not any shallower than 10 foot. Everything is about 15 to, I'm going to say 35 foot. And I've had fish come out from 35 foot up to about 20 to 15 foot and hammer this thing. So a lot of times the bait fish I'm finding here lately has been in that 15 foot range. So I'm trying to keep it at that depth. Every once in a while I'll let it sink below those bait fish, but just below them to where the bass are still, it's going still above the bass's head. So like I said earlier, I got a couple baits that I like to throw on the Alabama rig. My main bait that I love to throw is the Missile Bait Shockwave. And I'll go over the 4 colors that basically I throw on the Alabama rig. I don't throw hardly anything else. I don't go wild and crazy colors. I know some guys throw like a pink bait on the back. I've personally never tried that. Might have to one day, but so far what I'm doing has been working for me catching fish. I don't like to change it up too much. But the one is the Bombshell. This is an older pack. This is one I found. Actually, I found some extra ones in my boat. So this is a Bombshell. Like I say, it's got kind of like a bluish back with a hint of like a chartreuse color in it. And that one I'll throw on, like say, the one on the back, the trailer hook, I'm gonna guess you can call it. And then this one is their frosted purple. So you can see there, I don't know but this color is really great. A lot of times I'll use this and the Fishalicious color. They're the main 2 that I like to throw on there because this has got that kind of that pearl color. It flashes in the water a little bit when the fish is seeing it. It's kind of changing colors there. It's kind of got that shad look to it. And then the other one's just a pearl white. And I have thrown these a lot on like certain other reservoirs. I don't throw it much as on Smith because Smith is so clear. Granted, white is great on a clear lake, but I try to go more of the natural colors like the pearls and like the Fishalicious. That's got a gray. It's got a let's see if I can pull it right here. It's got a grayish tint to it, more like the gizzards and all that's running around here right now. Now, when it comes to sizes, so I try to match the hatch the best I can, but you also got to pay attention to where you're fishing because you'll have LY and all that stuff, but then you'll have your gizzard shad, and you'll see them down there. I mean, you can see them really clear as day. If they're gizzard shad, especially if you're using like live scope or anything like that. But if I'm looking around, sometimes you'll see the gizzard shad up on the bank kind of roaming around on certain sunny days. Then I'll throw bigger baits when I see them up there. But when they're just chasing them small baits, they got the 3.5s. And then when they're chasing the gizzards and all that stuff, I'll go to the 4.25s and throw them. It's just a little bit bigger profile. The 3.5s, they're like they're not as wide as the 4.5s. So the 4.5, I mean not 4.5s, but the 4.25s. So it just, it's a bigger profile when you go up like that. And if you've seen a lot of gizzard shad, or you're catching fish and you're noticing they got gizzard shad tails in them or whatever, definitely switch over to that. But if I'm in the back of a creek and there is LYs and all that back there, I'm going to go down to that smaller size and try to get them. But Other than that, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. If you got any questions, comment down below. In the description, I'll put all these baits in here where you can go find them at oneobjectivebf.com. And like I say, if you got any other input or anything that you see that maybe I can improve on with the A-Rig, please put them down in the comments below. We'd love to hear from them. But anyways, guys, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. I'll talk to you later, guys. See you.